Good evening, one and all. Welcome to the third session of the 3-day workshop on deep learning applications. I hope you all enjoyed the first 2-day sessions. So, today's session will start with the hands-on that we have discussed. So, all of you know, first you can start with your Colab notebooks. So, please open your Colab notebooks and try to load your MNIST dataset. So, try to split the data. I already gave you the commands. You just need to follow the commands. So now, is it visible to all of you? My screen is visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, good. Thank you. So I already explained in detail. So how to load the data set, how to split the data set and all. So I'll not be focusing on that. So today mostly we'll be focusing on how to load, like how to create the CNN model and how to tune the parameters and all. We'll be discussing that. So I'll spend more on that. Okay. So let's start with the session, the hands-on session. So we'll be discussing how to create a CNN model, how to implement the convolution neural network model for the handwritten digit classification. Please give permission to record the session. Yeah, just load it. So whatever the packages you need, so you just load the packages first. So I'll be working, I'm sure that I'll be working on the MNIST dataset. So first I just imported that. Then of course I need to visualize the data. So I just imported the pyplot package also. So then after loading the MNIST class, the MNIST digit class, so then you need to call the load data method. So this load data method itself will return all the 4 values, like so the feature values in xtrain, the labels of the train data in ytrain, the feature values of the test data in xtest, and then the labels of the test data in ytest. So that is how the load data function works. So then once the data is loaded, so you can just display what is the dimensionality of the data. So all of us, we very well know that there are 60,000 samples in the train data set and 10,000 samples in the test data set. And each of the example is of size 28 by 28 dimension. And it's a gray color image. That's why it's 2-dimensional. It's not 3-dimensional. So that is how. So we'll be taking gray color image because the processing will be simple. So that is why we are preferring this kind of sample data sets. Okay. So once you have the data set, just if you want, you can visualize. So either a particular image randomly you can select, or you can display set of the samples. So that is just for the visualization visualization part. So then once you understand how the data is, so actually your data is, yeah, here it's not required. No. Directly you can pass. Yes. So you just convert your labels to ytest, the labels to the categorical labels. So because we need to convert the one-hot vector encoding. So neural networks, they always they require the output of the data as the one-hot label encoding. So that's how we are converting our test labels to one-hot encoding using this part of the code. So now the data is ready. So like the given data set is the handwritten digit classification data set, and it is divided into train test partitions. Then we have the labels separately. So we have the features separately. So now everything is ready, and the labels are also converted to the categorical type. So now it is ready. We can start implementing the CNN model. Okay. So how the CNN model is implemented is, so for you have, what is CNN basically? CNN is basically containing different layers, the convolution layer, the pooling layers. Then you need to convert the data into flattened layer, and that is also called as a layer in Keras. Okay. And remember, we are using Keras. So I'm forgetting to explain that, but we are using a package called as Keras, which is used to implement the deep neural network models. And CNN is one of the deep neural network models, so I'll be using the same Keras. Okay, Keras is basically an API for which is created on top of TensorFlow package. Okay, so then convolution, basically it's a 2D convolution, so that's why we are importing the convolution 2D class. So that means it's a layer, so that's why it's part of our layers package of the Keras API. So then we have the max pooling, so max pooling is also of 2D, so that's why max pooling 2D layer is imported. Then we are importing the other layer, the flatten layer. So once you complete your convolution and the pooling layers, so the next layer is a flatten layer, right? So that is how, yeah, just to make it clear. So CNN is basically a stack of the convolution layers, then the pooling layers. So this is the first convolution block, I can say, and then followed by again the convolution layer, then the pooling layer. And after getting, so after completion of the convolution blocks, so such convolution blocks you can have any, so any number. So here I am having the first convolution block, the second convolution block. So this is how you can stack any number of convolution blocks, and each convolution block is a combination of a convolution layer and a max pooling layer. And again in the convolution layer you have the convolution operation and the, what is the other thing? It's a activation, nonlinear activation. So that is how your convolution block is created. So once you complete the convolution block, you need to have the final fully connected layers to get the final classification output, right? So the dense layers can take only the vector input. So that is how your 2D data, or the your volume of the data has to be converted to a vector. So for that you need to have a flatten layer. So that is why we are going to use the flatten layer. Okay, so these are the dense layers. So this is the flatten layer. Flatten layer means you are converting your volume data into the into a vector. That's all, nothing more than that. So then the convolution layers, already we discussed enough about all these things. Yeah, let's now see how the implementation. So just import whatever the layers are required. So here I know that I need a dense layer, I need a convolution of 2D, then I know that I need a max pooling layer, then I also know that flatten layer. So just import whatever the layers that you need from the Keras layers package. Okay, so once you import all the layers, no, you can start building your model. So how do you start building your model is, so you just create an object of the sequential class. Okay, so it's all about creating the classes and using the objects, that's all. So you need to you need to understand that, that's all. So sequential class object I am creating, and I am not passing any parameters here. So model object is created. So you can give any name. So you can say CNN underscore model, or it's just a variable, that's all. It's a class object. So now the model object is ready, and you are going to create a sequential model. Anyhow, it's a feed forward neural network, right? So whatever you are creating. So sequential is basically a class which allows you to create a deep neural network, that's all. So then once you have the sequential the class object, so what is the first layer you need to have? The convolution block you need to have, right? So in the convolution block you need to have the convolution layer followed by the max pooling layer. Okay, so let's try to create a model with with a single convolution block. So later on we'll extend. Okay, slowly we'll extend and see. So first I'm adding one. So how do you do this is, let me explain this first, so then you will be able to understand. So to add any layer to your network, you should use a method called as model.add. So in the model, in the sequential class, you have a method called as add method. So you need to use that. And this add method, it takes a parameter of type, so the layer type. And what is the first layer? You need to have first the convolution, right? So instead of creating the convolution class object, so directly I am passing this object, anonymous object I'm passing here, right? So I hope all of you are comfortable with classes concept. So those who understand that, they can follow this very easily. So that is how I'm passing the convolution 2D class object, so to this add method. Okay, and this convolution 2D class, again it expects different parameters. So the parameters it takes is, the first one is the number of feature maps. So here if you observe, no, how many feature maps we have? N1 number of feature maps. Okay, so you can have 32, 16. Usually that's a regular notation, regular practice to follow 16, 32 or 64. Or of course you can use any number of feature maps, nobody stops you, but that is a regular practice to follow that. Okay, I think someone is having a question, let me answer that. How do we know the filter values? filter values, do you mean that filter values are something like the convolution values? Sir, can you interact with me so that I can understand your question? So okay, filter values means, do you mean the values that we are using to apply the convolution operation?
Yes, madam. Yes.
Yeah, in that case, no. So those are the random values actually. So in
Okay.
any neural network, the parameters, those are the parameters, right? The weight values. So these values you are taking initially as random values. Automatically, when you create the model, so the model will be taking the parameters randomly. Okay, you need not to bother about that. Fine.
Okay,
Is it
madam.
clear, sir?
Thank you.
Ramakrishna, sir.
Yes,
I hope
madam.
that's
Thank you.
clear. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Yeah. So now this convolution layer, no, as I told you earlier, it's again expecting a different parameters. So the parameters it's expecting is, the first one is, so if you observe here, it's 32 is the number of feature maps. Okay. So for this convolution layer, how many feature maps you want to create? So I can very well change it to 16 also. Okay, I can very well change it to 64 also. So that's up to us. Okay, we'll see later. So how to change these parameters and all. So as of now, let's create a convolution layer with 32 feature maps. Okay, and then the second parameter is a tuple. So those who are comfortable with Python, they can understand it's a tuple. Okay, and the tuple indicates that. So what is the convolution filter size or the kernel size? So you can call it as kernel or the filter or the convolution, whatever it is. Okay. So we are going to use a 3x3 convolution, fine, or the filter. So that's what the second argument for this convolution 2D layer class is. Okay. And then when you are going to create the convolution 2D object, you need to pass all these parameters, because it's a parameterized constructor is written inside that class. So then you had to pass one more argument. So that is the activation function, and you can use the activation equal to. Here this indicates it's a keyword argument. So you are passing the activation equal to ReLU. That means you are going to use ReLU activation function. Oh, so here also you had to carefully understand so when to use which kind of activation function. So basically, the convolution operation is performed to extract the features. So whenever you are extracting the features, so you better apply some kind of nonlinearity to your data, right? So that is how you get better features. So always you can use any kind of nonlinear activation function. So either it is ReLU or it is a sigmoid or tanh you can use, but preferably so ReLU you can use, because there are many advantages of using ReLU. So if you use a sigmoid activation, no, so then of course I'll discuss that later. Please remind me. So when to use which sigmoid, which activation, and what is advantage and disadvantage if time permits. Okay, so let me continue with this at least. So then the activation function I'm going to use is ReLU activation. So then the next parameter you have to pass. So this is the next parameter. Okay, so it indicates the input shape. So for the first layer, you have to pass the input shape, and for the rest of the layers, no, they can understand automatically. So what type of what is the size of the input also, because already the previous layers input will become the the previous layers output will become the input to this layer. So the model itself will try to understand automatically. So you need not to pass any size value. So in that case, right? So that is how you need to pass the shape of your input in this case. So the shape of your input is 28 by 28 by 1. So we know that the image size already, that is the necessity of checking the values. Okay, that is why I stressed on it. So your input data is of size 28 by 28. 1 second, please. Yeah, am I audible to you?
Yes, madam. It is audible.
Yeah, yes, you are also audible. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah, so now, yes. So you have to pass the input shape. So to the first layer, you need to pass the input shape, and the input shape of our image is 28 by 28 and it is only gray color. That is why I'm passing 28 comma 28 comma 1. Okay, and if it is RGB, no, then I need to change this to 3. So that is how you need to decide. So when to pass what. Okay, so basically you are going to create add a convolution layer to your model. So that's what you are doing in this single line. And this convolution 2D layer, this class expects different arguments. And the first argument is the number of feature maps. The second argument is the size of the kernel or the size of the convolution operator. So then actually it decides how many parameters your model takes. Remember that. So then the activation function, which kind of activation function you are going to apply on your convolution operation. So I told you, right? So so here if you observe, some problem with my system. Yeah, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Not going back. Yeah. So here, no. So if you observe, the convolution block contains the convolution operation and the max pooling operation. Okay, and the convolution operation itself contains two things. One is the convolution operation and the nonlinear activation function. So that is how the convolution layer itself will receive all the parameters related to your convolution and also related to your activation function. Okay, so that is how we are passing the activation. What is the type of activation you are going to use? That also you are informing that here. Okay, so this is the information related to your convolution. So this is the size of the convolution. So how many such convolution operators you want to apply? Then what is the non-linearity on top of that? So this is just the input size. So now my convolution layer is ready. Okay, so then immediately after applying the convolution layer, so the next layer you have to add is the max pooling layer. So using the again, whenever you want to add any layer, so even if it is a deep neural network, also you have to use this method, add method, to add any layer to your model. Okay, to the model object. So now I am using the same add method, and I'm calling the I had to create the max pooling 2D layer. Right, so max pooling 2D is another class that I imported already. So this object I need to pass now, because the second layer immediately after the convolution layer, so it's a practice that we follow the max pooling, because to reduce the size of our feature maps. So that is how we are doing this. And this max pooling 2D, so usually we follow the 2 by 2 max pooling 2D operation, or 4 by 4, anything you can give. So that is what the max pooling layer is. So just you need to pass what is the kernel size. That's all you need to do. So then once you are done with this, so then I am just using one convolution block. Okay, that's all. So immediately, so convolution block means the convolution layer, then the max pooling layer, then you have to flatten that, followed by the dense layers. So we are going to create that model. Later on, we'll increase the convolution blocks. That's not a problem. Okay, let's see how to add a flatten layer. So flatten layer can be added again. You have to use the model.add method and just call the flatten method. So flatten does not need any argument. So you just simply pass the flatten class object. So that is how you are creating your flatten layer. That's all. Whatever is there, the output of this layer will be flattened, and that will be passed to the next layer. And what is the next layer that you want to create? So actually I want one dense layer, and after that I want the output layer. Okay, so how do we add the dense layer? Already we have seen how to add the dense layer yesterday. So you can use the add method as usual, and then you can use the dense layer, because here I'm going to add the dense layer. So just create the dense layer object, and this dense layer of when you create the dense layer, you have to pass these arguments. So this indicates how many neurons you want in the dense layer. Then after that, what is the kind of activation you want? So here I am going to use the ReLU activation function. And the kernel initializer, so what is the kind of initializer? And this is optional, not that required, so I'm just ignoring that. So unnecessary, make you confused by some question. I've seen convolution layer followed by pooling layer 2 times. It is some of the codes. Is there any specific benefit of applying convolution max point 2 times? So of course you can apply, so but you will be losing a lot of information. That's all. So when you have too much of information and if you want to reduce the data, then you can. It all depends on your data, but there is nothing wrong in that. So now, so far, we just created the model. Then we added one convolution layer where 32 feature maps, and each convolution layer is, each convolution filter is 3 by 3. Then the activation is ReLU. So then we added one max pooling layer. Then we added one flatten layer. Then we added one dense layer with 100 neurons. And then here also I am applying the ReLU activation function. Okay. And then finally, so this is not the output layer, right? And can you tell me how many neurons should be at the output layer?
Available number classes.
Yeah, number of classes, exactly right. Madam, we are using sparse matrix in CNN, but use dense. I'll tell you that. I'll explain you that. So please remind me. So I'll explain that out once it is done. So here the number of we had to add the output layer now. So now the model is ready without the output layer. So now finally it's your model should give the class output, right? So the class output layer should contain the number of classes in your problem. So how many classes we have? We have 10 classes, right? So your output neurons number should be equal to the number of classes. So we are going to add, always the output layer should be the dense layer, right? So I'm going to add one more layer, which is the dense layer, and the number of classes, the number of neurons is equal to number of classes. So I have created a variable to get the number of classes somehow. So that variable I'm passing, or otherwise simply you can hard code. But when you do this kind of thing, no, so it can be generic. It is generic and can be applied anywhere. So that is how I'm creating one more dense layer, and that is the output layer, and it gives me the output. What is the label of the model? So the prediction, one among the 10 classes. So that is how it does. And final layer, activation function also you need to be careful. And here it is multi-class classification. Whenever it is multi-class classification, you need to use the activation function as softmax. And what is the advantage, how it works, and they are all not in the scope of the workshop. Maybe whenever we join in the next workshop, no, so then we'll discuss all those things. So we need to apply the softmax activation function whenever you are using the multi-class classification and the dense layer at the output layer. Okay, and if it is a regression task, then you need to use the sigmoid activation function or the you need to use the linear activation function. That's not a non-linear activation function. So you can simply, why we need to use, so it requires again more than 1 hour of discussion it requires. So now with this the model is ready. So the model contains one convolution layer, one pooling layer, one flatten layer, then the dense layer of 100 neurons, another dense layer, that is the output layer with 10 classes. Done. So that is how the model is created. So once the model is created, yesterday also we have seen the creation of the deep neural network. Once the model is ready, let's check the architecture of the model. So that will help you to understand in a better way. So just visualize the model. Try to visualize the architecture of the model. And to visualize the architecture of the model, you can simply use model.summary. So here you can call the method model.summary. So when you call the model.summary, so it will tell you, so the convolution layer, the max pooling layer, then the flatten layer, so then the dense layer. Okay. So then finally the dense layer with 10 classes. So that is how your model architecture you can see. So with this simple architecture itself, how many parameters are there in your model? Can you imagine? It's 2 lakhs. So 2 lakhs parameters are there. And one simple notation is, whenever you have the number of parameters as some k, it is better to have 10 times the number of parameters as your input data. Those many samples if you have, you can expect very good performance for your model. So that is how the neural network models are data hungry. So the huge amounts of data that you pass, the model would be better. Okay. So is there any doubt so far? If you have any doubts, please raise Let me take this question.
No, ma'am, it's okay.
Yeah, good. So how to know the number of feature maps? So again, it's kind of empirical. It depends on the application. So the artificial neural networks, no, it's everything is kind of empirical. So depending on the application, depending on your data, so you need to decide by trial and error. You need to understand how many feature maps you had to use and all. Okay. So Maumita, I hope I answered your question. So then there was a question, right? So I yesterday explained that is sparse connections. The connections in CNN are sparse, but I'm using dense. So I also explained yesterday. So initial layers are convolution layers, and in the convolution layers you are sharing the weights, right? So when you apply So when you apply the weights, when you apply the convolution operation, you are taking a small filter right here on the input image. You are applying this 3 by 3 filter, and the same 3 by 3 you are repeating on top of every pixel of your image. Is it not kind of parameter sharing? And at one point of time, I asked you to visualize that. So you should assume that this is the input layer, and then the kernel as the weights of your model. So they can act as a connections, and then the outputs will be the next layer neurons. So that is how you need to imagine. So then you can understand. So that is how the connections in the convolution blocks are kind of sparse. They are sparse connections because you are sharing the weights, and the layers, of course. Finally, you need to go for the classification. Then you need anyhow the dense layers. Is it clear? Someone raised this question. So the name is not here. It's 14. The number is 14. CTDLA 14. I hope I answered your question. Yeah, thank you. So then another question. How can we see the output after convolution and max pooling? Yeah, of course, you can, but it requires a lot of effort. And again, so it's not in the scope of this class. So then I created this model. So you can see the model here. So now you can check this, like have a visualization of the model architecture. You can understand that. So then once the model is ready, so then you have to pass the kind of loss function. What is the type of loss function you have to pass, and also what is the optimizer function you want to pass to get the minimum or to update your weights. So I already explained yesterday what are the different optimization algorithms you can use. So there is a gradient descent, stochastic gradient, momentum function, ADAM, ADAGRAD, RMS prob. So these are all the different optimization algorithms. You can use any of them. Okay. And the loss function here, I'm using categorical cross entropy. So whenever your task is, it also depends. Loss function you have to use. What is the type of loss function you need to use? That depends on your application. That is the task. So here it is a multi-class classification task. Whenever it is a multi-class classification, you need to use categorical cross entropy. So if it is a binary classification, then you can simply go for cross entropy. So then when your problem is a regression problem, then in that case, you need to use the root mean square error RMSE. Right? So such kind of errors you can use. And then the optimizer function, I already explained, right? So the different optimization functions and metric. So what is the kind of metric you want? So after observing the model, training the model and getting the model accuracy, I need to check the performance of the model, right? So by observing one of the performance measure, I can understand how the model is performing. So for that, what is the kind of metric you want? So here it is a classification task. So I am using accuracy. I'm asking the model to retrieve the accuracy of the model as a metric. So that is what you need to specify here. To the model, you need to specify what is the loss function, so which is dependent on the application you are using, the task you are using, and the optimization algorithm. So this you can change actually. So depending on the optimization algorithm you are using, your training will change. So that is, your model learning will change. So the metric. So what is the kind of metric? In what performance? In what metric you want to check the performance of the model? That you can specify as a third argument. So all these three details you need to pass to the function called as compile. So in the sequential class, there is a method called as compile. So now this function takes all these parameters. So once you are done with it, you can compile your model and then check. Okay. So once you are done with that, so then you need to apply. We'll come back to this checkpoint and all later, at point of time. Once you understand this, then we will see how to apply the checkpoint and all. So then you need to fit. The model is ready means you need to apply the model on the train data, right? So you need to pass xtrain and ytrain and call the fit method. So call the fit method by passing the train data. So both the features and the labels you need to pass always to the models. While training, you had to show, because it's a supervised learning, right? The classification and clustering task, the classification and the regression tasks are supervised learning. That means you need to show sample data to your models. So that is how I am passing both the training and the ytrain, xtrain and the ytrain. So then I'll just give you a break and then I'll come back for the explanation of these things. Okay, so try to understand. So I'll give you 5 minutes. Can you try to execute this and check? Because somebody was asking yesterday, so if I give some time for them to execute, that would be better. Meanwhile, I'll take the questions. So already you have the rest of the data, right? So just you need to use these things. I'll share that in my chat, in the chat box. So open your Colab notebooks and then try to execute this code. So the handwritten digit recognition. So I have yesterday given the DNN model. So till here, no, you can use the same thing, and from here onwards, you can use this. And there were questions. Let me take the questions. How to
Ma'am,
understand data side data? Yeah, give me a minute.
ma'am,
So how
please show the model fitting part.
model fitting? Okay, sure. So model summary also I am sharing. Yeah, done. Of course, fitting is, you can use the same whatever you used for the DNN. So, question was how to understand data set to design particular, to tune the parameters, particular model. I didn't get the question actually. How to understand data set design to design particular parameters. So based on the performance of the model, you are training here, right, Gopal? So here, the model you are training. So while training the model, you can understand. So you just check the accuracy of the model. So if your model is improving, then you will be able to understand. So whether you need to improve the complexity of the model or you need to decrease the complexity of the model. So that is how you can uh, decide. So how many feature maps you need to add or how many dense layers you need to. So those are all the things you can decide depending on your uh, performance of the model. So while training, you will get the validation loss and all, right? So depending on that. So any one of you completed the execution part? Very slow. So I'm posting you the code for the evaluation.
Ma'am,
Yes, please.
uh, actually, I'm getting an error by compiling that expected convolution 2D 4 input. You have four dimensions, but got an array of shape 60,000, 28, 28. Like, why should we
I'll
normalize the data first? I have a question on that.
that I'll explain shortly. So the normalization part.
Actually, that without that, I'm getting an error about this.
Okay. Actually, no, that is not the reason actually. So, or I'll share the one second. Okay. If you want, you can include that also. Okay. Have you used this reshape? So use this reshape.
No, actually, I forgot
Yeah,
that.
you can.
I
Yeah,
missed
you
that out.
had to, right? So do that. Then you will be able to. Because CNN, it expects 2D inputs. So first of all, you need to make sure that your input is of size. So two dimensional. I'll just show you that. Your trained or shape. Yeah, here see. So my input is 60,000 samples are there in Xtrain. So 28 by 28, and that's single channel. The normalization is not required, it's optional. So I'll shortly explain you what that normalization and why is it required. If you do it without applying normalization, then you will be appreciating why we are using normalization. That's why I scripted. If I convert the training data, then training accuracy will be improved or not. If improved, then by to float 32. So you are converting to float 32. It's again, it depends. So if your training data is pixels, so there is no need to convert to float 32, right? Your input data, you need not to convert to 32, float 32. Even if you specify the type as float 32, your input will no more a float type. It's an integer type only. The representation is only float, right? But internally it will be an integer only. So did I answer your question? Yeah, thank you, sir. Is softmax a linear function? Actually, it's not a. It's a non-linear activation function. It's not. You can treat of it as just it will give the one of k representations, right? For that, we'll be using the softmax activation function. It's a non-linear activation function. And you cannot use it as an activation function for the layers except for the output layers. The reason is simple. So when you apply the softmax activation function, what happens is, so the output layer, the values will be kind of, the output of the neurons will be from 0 to 1. Okay. And also one more constraint is the sum of all these neuron outputs should be equal to 1. I'll explain that. Give me 1 minute, because so let them slowly understand. I'll understand why normalization is. So when you apply softmax, what happens is the sum of outputs of the neurons should become 1, right? That's how the softmax activation is designed. So if you have a large number of such neurons, and when you make it make that constraint, your neuron outputs will be close to 0, most of the neurons, and that's such kind of restriction is not required also. So that is the problem if you use a softmax as an activation function in between the layers. So at the output layer, why we are using is, so basically if there are 10 classes means what? Let me take a minute and explain. So here you can see this. So here there are 10 neurons at the output layer, right? So one of the k representation we are using for the actual data, right? Say for example, if it is 2, then so this is the 0th class. If this neuron should be ideally, this neuron should be 0. The output of this neuron should be equal to 0, and this output neuron should be 0, and this should be 1, and rest of the neuron outputs also should be zeros. But that will not happen. What happens is, so if your model is correctly identifying your digit 2, then this particular neuron output will be close to 1, and rest of the values are close to 0. Fine, it's kind of probability. You can think of it as a probability values. It's kind of the max out. So whichever neuron is having the maximum value, so that neuron, the value will be assigned to that particular neuron. So that is how you can treat it. So did I answer your question, the softmax linear function?
Hello, madam.
Yes, sir. Tell me.
If we use the ReLU function, means we get the values from infinity to plus infinity, no, ma'am.
No, right? It's ReLU is
Sorry,
what
after optimization, we get that values, no, ma'am. 0 to 9.
0. No.
We are using ReLU function for optimization, no, ma'am.
For?
Optimization, ReLU function.
ReLU function is the activation function only. We are using ReLU activation function for the hidden layers. So here if you observe, so where I am using ReLU, so here I am using ReLU. So the first convolution layer I'm using ReLU, then the max pooling layer. So here the dense layer I'm using ReLU, and this is also another dense layer, right? This is the output layer. At the output layer I'm using only the softmax layer. So internal layers I am using ReLU because I want the non-linear outputs from the neurons. That is why. And ReLU output is restricted to have any value from 0 to plus infinity. Is that clear, sir?
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you.
Madam,
Yeah, please, ma'am.
that max pooling 2D,
Yes.
why a list of lists is given as argument?
So here, what is the size of your max pooling? It's a stride, and this is a stride value, and this is the window size. So this
Yeah.
first argument indicates it's 2 by 2 pooling.
Yeah.
So here it indicates it's a what you call the stride. We use a non-overlapping max pooling, ma'am. Do you remember?
Okay.
That's
Okay.
why. Yeah, the stride
Again,
value.
the argument is a tuple.
Yes, of course, it's a tuple.
Okay, that's why you have two brackets.
Yes,
Oh.
ma'am. It's a tuple, and the first argument indicates it's a 2 by 2
Yeah.
window we are considering. That means
Yeah.
from the 2 by 2, you are taking the max value.
Okay.
Fine. And if it is the second argument indicates it's a stride, because we are going to apply the non-overlapping pooling, so we are giving the stride value as 2.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, welcome. But none of you completed the execution part. What's the problem?
Yes, ma'am, completed.
Yeah, good. So what is accuracy you are getting? You can
The training accuracy which I got is 98.94 and the validation accuracy is 98.10.
Okay, well then test accuracy. Okay, so anyhow, I hope you are all comfortable with doing the CNN, the basic CNN. Let me continue with the remaining parts explanation.
Excuse me, madam.
Yeah, yes, please.
Madam, I got an error there. I have sent by WhatsApp. Can you please see
WhatsApp.
in that input shape?
Input shape, ma'am, you need to reshape your input data. So I just pasted this code also. This part of the code is missing, I think. So because your input data should be of 2D.
Okay. No, that I've done.
You are done.
That I've done.
Still you are getting.
1 minute.
Where are you doing? So this ma'am. So please have a look at the screen.
Yeah.
This part.
That I've done. That I've done.
Where did you do? So did you do that before starting your model?
That is after those figures I've done. After the pie plot.
Yeah. Yes. Correct.
Yeah. Just after the.
You can do it wherever you want, but it should be before your, this thing.
Yeah. That is before that.
Then it should not. Okay, ma'am. We'll check that later.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll take it offline.
Yeah.
That will not be a problem. So
Yes,
we'll
madam.
take it offline.
Yeah.
So then let me continue with the remaining criticalities. So we discussed till here, right? So what is the, one more question was, so model dot, why we are using the normalization. So here I'm applying the normalization on the data. So your data can be of any dimensionality, any dimensions, right? So your input data can be of any dimensions. Say for example, if I take the weight value of a person, so it varies something like from 0 to 150 or 200 or even 500, right? So the scale of the weight value, the feature, that particular feature is 0 to 500. Say for example, so if I consider the gender of a person, so we usually use 0 for male and 1 for female, or in the other way, right? So that is how. So the possible values per gender is only 0 and 1. Is it not? So the minimum and maximum values are only 0 to 1, 0 and 1. So in that case, no, there will be a problem. So there is a kind of the scales are different for different features. So to avoid that kind of problem, we'll be applying the normalization so that every feature value will be within the range of 0 to 1 or within certain range. So with uniform scaling. So that is the reason why we apply the normalization. And especially when you are using the neural networks, no, the normalization will have great impact on the performance of your models. So most of the times when you apply the normalized data, when you apply normalization to your data, so there is a lot of chance to get improved performance of your model. The reason is simple. So you are restricting your data to a particular range, and also the uniform scaling you are giving to different sets of features. Say for example, our problem is kind of gender classification or some kind of classification, okay, and one of the feature is height of the person, and height of the person varies from something like some 50 centimeters to 150 centimeters or 200 centimeters, and the weight of the person, it varies from 0 to 500. The scale is varying, and whereas if I take another parameter kind of salary, the salary value would be something like from 1000 to 10 lakhs, is it not? So now you can observe there is a lot of scale variance in among the features. So when I pass these kind of features, no, so when you apply the model, so the scale value, the salary value will be having major impact, though it is not required. Actually, for the gender classification, your salary parameter is not having any impact, isn't it? So that is the reason why we better go for the normalization. So I hope it is clear. Even if it is not clear now, also it is not clear, then I can repeat it again. So now, so let me continue with the remaining things. It is over, yeah. So we are here in the fitting part, right? So when you create your model and when you compile your model, so that is when you pass after passing the laws, optimizer, and the metrics for your model compilation, then you can you have to apply your model on the train data. So I'm passing both xtrain and ytrain, and also so for the fit function. So that is how I do. And there are some other arguments for the fit function. So those are validation split. So validation split is the data which indicates how much portion of the data in the training. So already we have train data. So train data is how many examples are there in our training. So 60,000 samples are there for training, right? So among these samples, so do you want to have any validation split? So those who have little knowledge of the machine learning, they can understand why do we need the validation data. So what happens is first we apply the model on the train data. So later on we'll check the performance of the model on the test data, right? That's how we do any machine learning model. But the problem is when we completely apply on the train data, when we show the whole training data to the model and when we straight away go and apply it on the test data, so it may not give good performance. That is why what we do is we preserve a part of the training data as the validation data and will not show this portion of the data to your model. Actually, the tool will take care of everything, but you need to understand why you need to do this. So you are preserving certain portion of your training data. So especially from the training data, whatever you are passing, so that here I am specifying 0.15. That means 15% of your data will be preserved for validation. So that means that data will not be shown to your model. The model will be trained on the remaining, if I take 15% from the training data, then I'll be having some 85%, right? So 85% out of the 60,000. So whatever the samples I have, only on those samples my model will be trained. And while training, after each epoch or after each batch, your model loss will be calculated on your validation data. Can you see here? So after every epoch, I am seeing the accuracy on the training data, the loss on the training data, and in addition, you are seeing the validation loss and the validation accuracy also. So the reason why I'm getting this is, so in addition to the training data, I am preserving certain portion of the data as validation data. And on this data, your model will be tested internally. Of course, this is part of your training data only, but this data will not be shown to your model so that you can understand. So how your model is performing on the unseen data, so that your model becomes more robust. Is it clear? Yeah. Then the number of epochs. The number of epochs means what is the epoch? Yeah. So epoch means after showing when your model is updating your weights, updating the weights. That's what the epoch is. So whether it is updating the weights after seeing the entire data in the training data, or after seeing some of the samples in your training data, so that is what is decided by this epochs and batch. So actually there are 60,000 samples in my data, right? 60,000 samples in my training data. So if I pass, so there are three different ways to update your parameters. So it is done in 3 different ways, ma'am. Instead of loading MNIST data, what I have done is, so we'll check that later. So you have 3 different kinds of learnings. One is online learning, then batch learning, then the other kind of learning is one is online learning, batch training, or mini batch training. So these are the different kinds of learnings you can use. So if you are using online learning means after showing each sample to your model, then you need to update your weight parameters. So that's the online learning is. Here, online learning will be effective. You can reach best performance, but it costs you too much. It is too expensive because your weight updation is after showing every example. So if you have 60,000 examples, you are updating your weight 60,000 times, and that you will be repeating. If your number of epochs are 10, then 10 times you are repeating that. So that is computationally expensive. So that is why what we can do is, so we can do the batch training. So in case of the batch training, what we can do is you can show all the examples to your model, and then at the end you can update your weights. But the problem here is your model will be biased towards the last set of samples. That will be the problem, but it is computationally less expensive. That is why another kind of training is introduced called as mini batch training. So that is the reason why I am passing a batch size. So in this case, what happens is out of my 60,000 examples, first 32 examples, because my batch size is 32 examples will be shown to my model. Okay. Then after seeing the 32 examples, so you will be measuring the loss, and then you are updating the parameters accordingly. That is the weights accordingly. And then the next 32 samples will be shown to the model, and then again the model loss will be computed, and then again the weight will be updated. And this will be repeated for till the completion of your 60,000 examples. So when I completely show all the 60,000 examples to my model, so such thing is called as an epoch. Is that fine? So here I am passing 2 epochs. That means you are showing your whole training data 2 times to your model. Fine. And here my batch size is 32. That means I am updating my weights after showing 32 examples to the model. So I hope this would be enough to understand this. And verbose, as I already explained, no. So if you want to get the feedback from the model while training, so then accordingly you can set your verbose. And callbacks, we'll check that later. So if you are clear till here, then we can proceed. You're almost done.
Yes, I'm clear.
Yeah, good. So if any one of you have doubts, no, then please raise. So there will not be any problem with those who are comfortable. Ma'am, instead of loading MNIST data, what I have to do to give my own data set. So you can pass, right? I already explained you yesterday. So how to pass your own data also. So if it is image data, no, then it will be little tough. Like you just explore how to load the data. Just Google it. You will get to understand. You need to write kind of 10 to 15 lines of code to load the data. Once you have the data, so then you can implement the model. That's all. It's not a big deal actually, but you need to be comfortable in writing the code. That's all. Is that fine for all of you? Another question. So those who have doubts, please raise. Yeah, okay, good. So then the last thing is callbacks. How to apply callbacks? One thing. So let me add one more layer. So what is the best accuracy you got so far?
98.10.
Oh, good. 98. With single convolution block itself, we are getting 98 means it's very good, no? Your model is really good. On training or the test, always whenever you express your model performance, you have
On
to,
test data, I got 97.98.
yeah, on the test data only you had to express your model performance, okay, not on the training data. So then I will be adding,
Actually, I
because
tested on validation data, that one.
validation data is okay, you need not to bother about that, that's fine. So then once let's include two more layers, one more convolution block, let's add. So I'm going to add one more convolution block, and we'll see. Already the performance is really good. So let's try our luck whether it will be improved or not. So here I just, so if you observe now, so this is the first convolution block. Now this is the second convolution block. So every convolution block contains one convolution layer and one pooling layer. So this is the convolution layer. Again, I'm using the 3x3 convolution filters and 32 feature maps. If you want, no, you can change that to 16. Or usually we don't reduce because we need to get more and more features, right? That's why we don't reduce the number of feature maps, we increase. So that is how you can add. Is it clear? So that is how you can add one more convolution block. Then you can even add one more, if you want, you can add one more dense layer. And depending on your data and depending on your loss function, the complexity of the data, you need to change it. So now you can see, I have included one more convolution block and one more dense layer. Now you can see.
Ma'am, what if we add the dropout layer in between the dense layers?
Yeah, of course you can add. So that is actually to reduce the overfitting of the model. So you can apply dropout. So what happens is certain connections will be nullified. So for that you can use the dropout layer. Okay. Change stride filters. Of course you can change stride and filters. So filter size can change to 5x5. This is how I can have a 5x5. So here I want 16 filters. I can make 16 feature maps. So this is how I can. So here I can add stride value. This is how you can do. Stride, I need to add one more parameter. So we'll come back to that later. So that is how you can. Actually add new convolution blocks, and you can. So now can you try adding this convolution block and then check what is the accuracy of the model? So is the model performance is improved or not? So you already have the code with you. So now you just need to add one more convolution block and train the model. Is it improved? Who is supposed now?
I'm still executing this one.
Yeah, fine.
Madam, your voice is not audible to us.
Oh, I'm sorry for that. Sir, is it now?
Hello?
Is it audible, sir?
Very low, madam, very low.
Oh, is it? Why?
Hello,
Sir,
ma'am.
is it fine now?
Actually, no, ma'am, it's audible.
Audible? Okay, fine, good. Yeah, please ping me if you have such problems. No, otherwise I don't understand what is happening on the other side.
Madam, it is not audible to me. I don't know that whether it is not audible
Okay.
to everyone or not.
Yeah, fine, sir. No problem. Thanks for raising that. That's what I'm telling. If you have any problem, please let me
Is
know.
it audible to all?
Yes, sir.
It is audible to us.
Okay, I think it's the problem of my device.
No problem, sir.
Madam, one doubt, ma'am.
Yeah, please.
If you are considering a 3D image, we
Yes.
want to use the depth parameter, no, ma'am?
Yes, here you can pass. Then in that case, no, you need to pass the depth parameter. What you need to do is, so here the input shape. So for example, it is a 3D. Okay. So here in this case, so okay, are you watching the screen? So here you need to pass the depth. So whatever the depth is. If it is RGB, it will be 3, right? So in that case, you need to pass it as 3. And then So here your convolution size also should be something like this, 3D now.
Okay.
Sorry, it's 3. That is how. Is it fine?
I'm adding that parameter in the third line, ma'am. Max pooling 2D of.
If your data is 3D, then only you can do. Otherwise, don't do.
Okay. Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. So on max pooling, you need not to do, because the feature map is always 2D only, right? Do you remember? I already explained yesterday. So whatever the channel is, the output feature map is only 2D, and you will be having multiple such 2Ds. That's why you are getting volume every layer. The output of the convolution is always a 2D, even if it is depth, even if it is volume. So is
Okay,
it
ma'am.
clear? Yeah.
Clear, ma'am.
Yeah. Ma'am, someone asked me to change the stride. So actually it takes a tuple. That's why it was not working. So you can check here. So strides you can change, because horizontal, like the number of rows and number of columns, right? So column wise and row wise, what is the stride you need to specify here. So this is the row wise stride and this is the column wise stride. So you just specify that with the keyword parameter strides. Strides equal to 2, 2. So you need to pass the tuple. Oh, it's 7:12. We are getting late, so I'll just stop it. I'm getting error. Name checkpoint is not defined, because you need not to have a checkpoint. No, why? I didn't explain anything about the checkpoint. Yeah, let me quickly explain what the checkpoint is. With that, I'll stop the hands-on session. So, so here, yeah, very good. After adding, good. So actually, your original
accuracy of 98.27 on test.
Understand. So original accuracy is 98 and it's reducing. That means your model is overfitting. So because I added one more dense layer also, right? So you can reduce that. So even if your number of feature maps are more. So depending on that, no. So you will get to understand. You just practice it. You will try to understand. So how to change your model. So when your model complexity is reducing, no. So you had to check the validation loss over the epochs. Okay, there is it. Validation loss. Yeah. So see here, my validation loss is 98 here, and validation accuracy is 98.07, and here in the next epoch it's 98.39, and similarly the loss is 0.07 here and 0.05 here. So in that case, you need to check the validation loss. So if the validation loss is kind of increasing, means then your model is overfitting. That means then you have to reduce the convolution blocks or the feature maps or the kernel size. That's how you need to. Okay, stride equal to 7. Min tool is, so yeah, of course, bad stride, because I'll let you know. By the end of this class, you will be able to appreciate why I was using 3x3 kernel. Okay, good that you are trying. I'm happy that many of you are trying. So now that means you are understand, you are following the class. Yeah. So let me explain one more thing, the model checkpoint. So why do we need to use the model checkpoint? Actually, no, here we are using the epochs, right? So no one knows in which epoch will be getting the better performance of the model. So say for example, 200 epochs it might take, or 20 epochs, or 10 epochs. So no one knows, right? So that is a problem. So what we can do is we can put a checkpoint for the model. So then the model will save the best model. So how to create a checkpoint is, so you just need to load the model checkpoint class, and then after that, so you just create the file name. So because I am in the drive, I am using the drive, no. So I just gave the path. Actually, my file name is bestmodel.h5, and you can use whatever the model you want, the name you want. Okay, and always the model is stored in the h5 file. That's why I'm using .h5. That's all. So then you just call the model checkpoint. You just create the object of the checkpoint class by passing the file name where you want to save the model. Then, so based on what you need to understand, the system has to understand whether it is the best model or not. So that is what the monitor validation loss or the validation accuracy. So I am mentioning validation loss. Then verbose, so it's the same. So then the save best model only equal to true means you are asking the system to save your best model only, or otherwise with every epoch your model will be saved, and from that you have to check which model is best for you. So this is how, so you can, because it is a loss, no, so your mode should be minimum. Okay, so that is how you can create a checkpoint object. So once the checkpoint object is created, your model will be saved in the file name. So once the model is available, no, you need not to train it again. Later on, when you want to apply the data, apply it on the data at later point of time. Say for example, the model is giving good accuracy for 200 epochs. So you need not to run the model again and again. Okay, as and when you load the model. So what you can do is you just need to store the model, and then you just use the load model function. So to load that model and then apply it on the test data and evaluate its performance, or use it on the real-time mode. So that is how you need to do it. Is it clear? So if you have any doubts, you can raise, or otherwise I'll continue. So I just have less than 15 minutes for the next part. So with this, I conclude the hands-on. So enough details I have given. So if you have any doubts, no, you can raise at any point of time. So let me continue with the theory part. So it will be interesting, it will be exciting actually. So that's why I'm more. Yeah. So in the first day 1, day 2, so whatever we discussed, okay. So the convolution neural networks, the deep neural networks, all those things, the multi-layer perceptron, all these things we discussed in the first 2 days. So then in this today's schedule, no, so we'll just have a look at what are the different standard deep convolution networks. So how deeper? So actually, initially we started with single convolution block, then we extended to 2 convolution blocks, right? So then we have with 2 dense layers or 3 dense layers we tried. So similarly, how deeper we can go into the implementation. So is it good or bad? So that's what we'll be kind of exploring now. So we'll have a look at the deep convolution neural networks that are actually implemented for the visual recognition. So these are the list of standard deep convolution neural networks, and already we finished the practice session for today. Okay, so already we are comfortable with the CNN architectures. So let's see what are the deep convolution neural networks that are available, already implemented. So there was a challenge called as large scale visual recognition challenge. So that was basically introduced with an objective to allow the researchers, the research community, to compare their progress or their algorithms on the object detection or the classification models. Of course, different people are implementing different classification algorithms, but no one knows whose model is the better model, because all of them, they are using different data sets. Then you cannot compare them, right? It will not be fair enough to compare them. So that is the reason why, with the intent of benefiting the research community, so they introduced one challenge called as large scale visual recognition challenge, where a data set is actually introduced. The data set's name is called as ImageNet dataset, and if you are more interested to know about this challenge, so you can go explore at this link. Okay, and so basically you can evaluate your algorithms so using this challenge or using this data set. So if your problem is object detection or it is a classification task. So mostly for these, targeting these 2 tasks, this data set and this challenge was introduced. So basically this challenge was introduced in 2010, and the data set introduced was the ImageNet dataset, which is having millions of images. Basically, this dataset contains millions of images, and most of the images are annotated. So 14 million images are actually hand annotated. So that is for the classification purpose, your data, like volumes of the data is ready. Okay, and there are thousands of classes. So the data is belonging to thousands of the classes. So there are, of course, so millions of images, and 14 million images are already given labels. So the label data is available, and of course you can you have the data which is already the bounding boxes are also available, so that you can use it for object detection and for the localization purpose also. So that's what basically the ImageNet dataset is. So this is basically useful resource for the researchers and the educators and even the students who are working on the deep learning models. And if you observe the leaderboards of this large scale visual recognition challenge, so ILSR SVRC challenge, So this is how it is. So from 2010, so you can observe this is the leaderboard. So on the x-axis, you can see the type of networks, the type of classification models that were used, and on the y-axis, it's a classification error. So initially, the first 2 years, no, so they were using the handmade features. The features were engineered. That means in the beginning class, I explained about the handmade features and all. So that kind of features were introduced, and if you observe, the accuracy was the error rate was 28%. So in the year 2010, basically SIFT features were introduced with some kind of classification model. Then in the year 2011, again the same kind of features were used, and the accuracy, the error rate was 26. It's little reduced. And if you observe, no, in the year 2012, it's kind of a break for the convolution neural networks or for the deep learning community. Because if you observe, the reduction of the error is 10%. It's really huge. If you observe now in the year 2010, it was only 28%. It was 28%, and in the next year, the error was reduced by 2% only. So that itself was great. But so in the year 2012, there was a big breakthrough because of the introduction of the convolution neural networks, especially the deeper convolution neural networks, which helps the people to reduce the error by 10%. So from 26% error rate, it was reduced drastically to 16%. So that was the use of convolution neural networks. And from there on, so it was kind of take off for the deep learning community, and every year it was reduced. Some kind of deep convolution neural network was introduced. From there on, only convolution neural networks were the ones who were at the leaderboards. I'll show you that also, the detail. So if you observe in 2010 and 11, the convolution, the regular models, the shallow neural networks were the leaders. So with 28% error rate and 26% error rate. Then in the year 2012, LXNet, then 13, ZFNet, 14. So two different networks were introduced, VGG 19 and GoogleNet. And then in the year 2015, ResNet. So year 2016, ensemble of the networks, the deeper networks. Then in the year 2017, SCNet was introduced. And at that point of time, the error rate was 2.25. And you know, actually, if you give the objects or if you give the images to the humans, the error rate was 5% for the ImageNet data. But these deep neural networks, they could perform beyond the expectations. They could give less error rate than what the humans produce. So that successful the convolution neural networks was. So let's briefly have a discussion on the deeper networks. Okay, so let's start with the LXNet. So I'll just go through the slides. That's all. I may not be able to spend much time on this. So just give you the intention. That's all. So in the year 1998, actually, the CNN was introduced by Leekon, so who was the Turing Award winner of 2019, and the number of parameters was 60,000. Then in the year 2012, LXNet was introduced, and so it was on the top of the leaderboard on the ImageNet Data Challenge, and it was introduced by LX. And if you observe, the number of parameters are 60 million. Then in the year 2014, two models were introduced, actually the VGG and GoogleNet. So GoogleNet was having 4 million parameters and VGG was having 138 million parameters, and Google was on the top again, but with 4 million parameters only. So then we should understand, right, what made them with 4 million parameters itself, they were on top of the leaderboard. So then VGG 16, of course, they tried with the deeper neural network, 138 million parameters, they somehow managed to train the network, and they are on the second place. Then the year 2015, ResNet was introduced, and they were at that point of time, they leaded the score, and it was 3.6%, the top 5 the top 5 class error rate. So then later on also there were a few kinds of deep neural networks. So let's start with LXNet. So this is the LXNet architecture. You can see. So here there are eight layers. So you can see the convolution layer, then the max pooling layer, the convolution, the max pooling, convolution, max pooling, and then the dense layers. The final 3 dense layers are there. Then finally, the output layer is the flattened layer. The flattened layer. Yeah. So this is how the convolution neural network was designed by Alex in the year 2012. Fine. So you can observe the input image is of size 3. It's a RGB image. So it takes 227 by 227 size image. And finally, your final dense layer, the last dense layer is 4096, and finally your number of classes are 1000. That's why it's 1000 neurons on the output layer. So that's how the AlexNet was designed. So if you observe the number of parameters, no. So you just try to go through if you can, or otherwise you can leave it. So the number of parameters are, so how many parameters? It's 62, right? 6 million parameters, 60 million parameters are there. Then in the next case, AlexNet, of course. So how it was introduced? So it was having the accuracy of 84.7%, whereas the leaderboard was 84.7. That was AlexNet. But when it was compared to the non-neural network, no, so that is non-CNN architecture, the second place was only 73%. So you can compare these two models. So more than 11% accuracy difference was there. So there onwards, for the visual recognition problems, so better go for CNNs. That's all. As long as you have enough computational power and data, of course, ImageNet data set is there, so you can make use of that and you can create wonders. And this AlexNet is having 8 layers and 5 convolution layers, 3 fully connected layers with 60 million parameters, right? Of course, the model was trained. You can't even imagine. It was trained for 5 to 6 days and with 3 GB GPUs. So that time they were the powerful GPUs. On those GPUs itself, it was trained for 5 to 6 days. And of course, the later networks, they have taken much more time because they are much more deeper. And what happened was, in this model, the overlapping max pooling layer was used. Actually, we used non-overlapping, right? So then the ReLU nonlinearity was actually introduced at this point of time. Earlier, ReLU was not there. The ReLU was introduced by Alex. And there was another thing, that's a dropout, which was used to remove overfitting of your model. Dropout layer was introduced. Okay. And then the data augmentation techniques. So when you have not enough data, then your model overfits. So to avoid that, you can use data augmentation techniques. So all these things were introduced in AlexNet. And then VGGNet was introduced in the year 2014 by Simonian and Disserman. Okay. And which is having, so VGGNet is actually, it stands for Visual Geometric Group. It was designed by them, a group of people. And there are certain variants. So the variants are VGG16 and VGG19. And the number of parameters are 138 million parameters. Actually, they wanted to increase the number of layers in their model, because when AlexNet was introduced, the number of layers were only 8. With 8 layers itself, they could manage to get the leaderboard. So these people, they wanted to increase the number of layers, thereby they wanted to get better improvement. So the difference between the AlexNet and the VGGNet was, in AlexNet, 11 by 11 kernels were used with a stride value of 4. And basically in VGGNet, what they did is, they used only 3 by 3 kernels with a stride of 1. And now I hope you appreciate why I used the 3 by 3 kernel with a stride of 1. Fine. So it was already proved that, so small window sized kernels gives better performance than larger kernels. And the stride 1 is better. And of course, no one knows which works. But this is how it was proved. And the 1D convolutions, if you observe, no, so in VGG architecture, 1D convolutions were introduced. Then, so if you observe, no, so you can see, so there are 2 convolution blocks, followed by this, the red line indicates the max pooling, then followed by 2 convolution blocks, then the max pooling, then 3 convolution blocks, max pooling. So here, as you overlay the convolution blocks, what happens is ReLU on top of ReLU. So that thereby you are getting more nonlinearity to your data. That means you are getting better features. So that is how VGG16 was introduced. Then VGG19 was also introduced, except the number of layers, the architectural differences were not there. So VGG19 was with 19 layers. So then in the same year 2014, so Google actually introduced a model called as GoogleNet, and it's also called as Inception Network, which was introduced by this guy. Okay, and this GoogleNet was having 22 layers. So in case of the VGG16, it was 16, VGG19, it was 19, but Google, they were having 22 layers, and they introduced a new concept called as one-by-one convolutions to reduce the number of parameters. As they could reduce the number of parameters, so they could manage to, that's why the number of parameters, if you observe, no, so with 138 million parameters, VGG19 was created, but whereas Inception Network, the number of parameters were only 4 million parameters. So how the number of parameters were reduced was with the help of the one-by-one convolutions. The operations, these operations were introduced. Then in the year 2015, he and with his colleagues, he introduced a neural network called as ResNet, which stands for Residual Network. So this residual network is having a block called as residual block. So basically it's divided into 4 different stages. In each block, so you can have convolution layers, but the convolution layer, if you observe, no, here to here there are connections. So here to here you can observe these connections. Usually whatever we have seen, of course it's a feed-forward neural network only, but every whatever we have seen so far in all those networks, the neurons in one layer are connected to the neurons in the next layer only. But here there are a kind of connections to the layers that are after 3 layers, right? So these are called as residual connections. Because of these residual connections, the overfitting problem was reduced, and the model could be much deeper. Here, if you observe, no, ResNet, a lot of variations were there with 50 layers, 52 layers, even 152 layers were also there. Fine. So the deeper networks were possible with all these kinds of architectural differences. And of course, all these models were trained on ImageNet itself. And there was another network called as Exception Network, which was an extreme exception, you can think of it. So exception basically stands for extreme inception, and it was created by the author Francois Collet, so who is the creator of the Keras model. Okay, so it's as an extension to the inception architecture. So this was introduced. So in this architecture, the convolutions called as depth-wise separable convolutions were introduced. So these are the different neural networks, depth-wise neural networks that were introduced. And of course, there is a little comparison. What happened? What happened? Yeah. So this is a performance for the performance comparison. No, I'm almost done. So the parameters, if you observe, you can compare. ResNet, they have 60 million parameters. So the number of operations, 11 billion flops operations you had to perform. So, but the accuracy was improved because of the shortcut connections. So then the performance comparisons, you can have a look at them. So this is a motivation kind of why you should go for the deeper convolution neural networks. So with this, I conclude the session. And if you have any questions, I'm open to the questions. I'll spend a few minutes for taking the questions. Let me check the questions. Can we apply AdaBoost ensemble techniques after flattening? So you cannot apply, right? AdaBoost is different. It's not a neural network based, but you know, you can actually apply ensembling after getting the neural network outputs. So basically, so at the feature level, you can do the ensembling, or at the decision level, you can do the ensembling, or you can even have a joint model kind of thing. You can have so 2 different deep neural networks also you can ensemble. So that is how you can do. So madam, please send today's code. Sure, I'll surely share by the end of, before closing the session itself, I'll surely share. So then on the overall, the algorithms or code behind are not known to us, of course, because it's a tool, no? So it will be really difficult to go into the details. If you are interested, you can explore TensorFlow. So TensorFlow is the one which allows you, to give a more hand on the code. So Keras is an API, whereas TensorFlow, so it allows you to create complex models. We can only use them for the predicting the output, give the inputs. Is that understanding correct? So kind of actually you can create your own model. So you need not to have that assumption. So because you are using Keras, you have that. So you can go for TensorFlow if you really want to have the hand-on. So inner details also. Not chess Kodan. Yeah, people wanted me to go slow, but somehow it's done almost anyhow. I'm done with this. So brief about DenseNet. What do you mean by DenseNet? So of course there are variety of networks: DenseNet, ResNet, ExceptionNet, Inception ResNet v2. So there are a lot of networks. So if you understand the basic CNN architecture, you can understand rest of the models. A pre-trained net. All these are the pre-trained networks only, actually, no. Okay. So then please share day one recording. Sure, I will record tomorrow. I need to spend a day to record the first day, and then I'll surely share that. Can you please show how to reload the model from Drive after using callback to save the model? So I have shown, right? So I'll share the code so that you can actually will be able to load the model that is shared, that was already shared, saved. Okay, that few lines of code would be enough. So with that,
Hi. Hi. Good evening, all.
Good evening, sir.
This is Dr. N. V. Ranjanailu, and I am the part of Team Cognitron Academy. First of all, I would like to thank all the participants for attending the workshop. And we are very grateful, we are very happy, and we are grateful to you all, because without knowing anything about us, you believed us and you encouraged us to do these types of workshops. And the objective of our Cognitron Academy is to transfer knowledge in the emerging fields of computer science. And our motto is, we have one motto, and our motto is learn, practice, and experience the expertise. This is our motto. And we are going to conduct so many workshops, series of workshops. If anybody is interested, we are going to add as a mentor for our upcoming workshops. And we are considering you as our well-wishers, and we are expecting good association among us in all aspects of teaching learning process. And I would like to mention one point here. In this workshop, we have the participants in both extremes. All of you observed that one. And some are in initial stages of deep learning, and some are doing good research in deep learning. To balance these two types of people, our resource person, Mrs. Josna Devi, worked hard and worked very hard, I can say like this. And I would like to thank our Mr. Sharif for his great work and support. And I appreciate the efforts of Mrs. Josna Devi for her sincerity and dedication in delivering lectures and hands-on sessions and offline preparation also. And we are going to organize so many workshops, and we are planning. And first of all, we have planned to organize one workshop during 30 and 31st of this month. Just continuation to this workshop on transfer learning. And next, we are going to plan workshop like Python programming, Python for data science, advanced deep learning models, and data analytics using Tableau, Industry 4.0, cyber security, blockchain technology, kind of things. And as of now, we planned these workshops, and we will let you know the dates through our WhatsApp group, through this WhatsApp group only. And we are also planning to organize one-day workshops on MATLAB and LaTeX also. And now I request participants to share feedback on this workshop and suggestions for betterment. Can anyone? Please proceed.
Yeah, before that, I just want to thank all the participants. So for your patient listening, I thank all of you, all the participants. So it's really difficult, like from the remote, no? So I don't even know. So so whether you are able to follow or not, so whether you are able to understand or not. For me, it's really tough to figure out that. So your cooperation was really wonderful. So I had a problem, kind of. So different levels of people were joined, like very low level, who are very new to the deep learning concepts, and who are kind of having moderate knowledge, and who are kind of comfortable with the deep learning models. So all these three different kinds of people I had to manage. So somehow I tried my best to justify all these three kinds of people. So I thank you once again. So I thank all the participants for their patience listening. So for believing in me, and their feedback was wonderful. So it was the one who what gives me a lot of strength to deliver such lectures in the future. And also I must thank Dr. Viranjanelu Garu, so for supporting me throughout the sessions. And so I should thank Sharif, so who was the one who is taking care of most of the things related to the workshop. So his support was enormous, I would say. So I'm really thankful, Sharif. So thank you very much. So over to Ramakrishna sir. So now Ramakrishna sir will be giving the closing remarks, and the rest of the participants, you also can give your feedback. I'm always ready. I'll give you the my email, my mobile number, so you can contact me. So I'm open to comments and questions. Thank you once again. I thank you very much, all the participants. Thank you very much. Ramakrishna sir, over to you.
Okay, madam. Thank you.
Over to you.
Good evening, Varandal. Really, it gives me an immense pleasure to give closing remarks for this
Ramakrishna
session.
sir, you are not audible. Okay.
Hello, Ramakrishna sir.
But now is it audible?
Yes, yes. You proceed.
Hello, now is it audible, madam?
Yes, sir, it's audible.
Yes, sir. Proceed, sir.
Okay. So good evening, Varandal. So my name is S.V. Ramakrishna. I am working as assistant professor in the department of CSE, Vignan University. So really, I felt it is my immense pleasure to give closing remarks for this workshop. So before that part, being a participant of this workshop, let me thank the resource person of the workshop, Mrs. B. Josna Devi, for imparting good amount of the knowledge on deep learning applications. So of course, it is more than sufficient also. So to understand and to do the research furtherly in the machine learning as well as the deep learning. So ma'am, really we are fortunate to have the resource person like you, and the session was very wonderful. So which enable us in many key points of the deep learning applications. So at this point of time, I could not able to control myself to share one point in this juncture. So 1 year back, I had attended a workshop titled in NIT Warangal. So I didn't get this much of the practical exposure there, but here I experienced and I have received the good practical exposure as well as the theoretical also. So really it was wonderful. So I observed that the workshop is started with the basic and it is moved to the wider perspective. That kind of the learning enables the every participant to work and participate in their domains very comfortably. So sometimes I have attended many workshops also. So we will attend and we will come back and we will leave that. But this workshop gave the energy and boost us to continue the research furtherly in that applications and in that area also. So we have received a good amount of the practical exposure. So I hope that all of us enjoyed this workshop with utmost satisfaction. So there is no doubt at all. So because it was clearly shown in the interactive part. So I observed that workshop was organized in a more interactive way instead of the one-way bombarding. Usually in the workshop, we use it to get the sessions in one way only. And at the end of the workshop, there will be a question and answer sessions. But this workshop was not like that. From the day one, beginning of the day one to the till the end of the day, the workshop was more interactive. Every participant is being asking the questions to the resource person and he is answering. So very good. I believe that all these things are possible only because of the expertism of the resource person. So I knew that she had a good amount of the publications in this area, and she is the first person in the Vignan University who identified the necessity of the GPU machines to get the better results in their research, and she made it possible and happened. And now many of the faculty in the computer science department as well as the research scholars are using that infrastructure what she suggested 2 years back. So and in addition to that, as per the instructions of the honorable our chairman sir also, so she was identified as a good teacher in the machine learning applications, and so he recommended her to take the classes to the non-computer science faculty also, like EEE people and mechanical people. So they were under the discipleship of herself, and she imparted the good knowledge to them, and they cleared the many MOOC certification courses also during the lockdown. So that was also possible only because of her teachings. So that's why, so here I would like to give one sincere advice to all the participants that, so we have to practice, and as Veeranjaneyulu sir said that practice, experience and expertise. So I am also pointing that we have to practice and experience and to get more expertism also. And here I request the resource person to share her publications also to get understand more about this area. Ma'am, definitely we will cite those papers in our research articles where we are going to use your work. And last but not least, I thank the organizing committee and the founder of this Cognitran, Dr. N. Veeranjaneyulu garu. So for organizing this wonderful workshop without any gaps. And my special thanks to the Sharif who is giving the very comfortable things for the time. And finally, I thank the Almighty, so who provided the good thought to organize this workshop, and he provided the good wisdom to the resource person, and of course good mind also to the participant to get the things required whatever we want through this workshop. And thank you all. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
So we have actually planned few workshops, so in the near future. So one will be kind of continuation, as many participants are interested in this kind of convolutional and deep neural networks. No? So in the next week itself, we are planning to have a workshop on transfer learning, where these deep convolution neural networks, whatever I explained at the end, LXNet, LeNet, all these things. So these models, you can use it actually for many purposes, many applications. So how to tweak these models, or how to make use of these models for your applications. So that we'll be discussing that in that next workshop. So with the title transfer learning, we'll be launching that workshop. So then few people requested me for the Python programming, then Python for data science, machine learning and algorithms, deep learning applications, deep convolutional neural networks for transfer learning, and also for text classifications or the text processing, how the deep models can be used. Of course, we could not see beyond the image data sets or the regular data, right? So how to use the deep learning models for text processing, so that also we can have in a workshop. So we have plans to conduct various workshops on various topics. So if you are interested, then share your details to our team, so they'll plan accordingly. So instead of we plan and we organize the workshops, no, so we wanted to make our workshops more curated. So like according to the requirements of the audience, we better plan the workshops. So your feedback and your inputs will be useful to make the workshops more fruitful. So please don't forget to share your feedback. So not only about the workshop, so but also about the what you are expecting, what you are expecting in the future.
Ram Kumar, may I share the feedback, please?
Yes, sir. You can definitely share your feedback. Please share your feedback.
Thanks, Sharif. So my name is Ram. Yeah, my name is Ram Kumar. I'm also a research scholar within the Department of IT, with guidance from Viranjanailu and other guides as well. So, firstly, this deep learning applications is part wherein I come from 2.5 decades of industry experience. We deal with the day in and day out of multiple data sets and processing millions of transactions on specified POC point of projects. Proof of concepts and point of view, kind of those things. So machine learning and deep learning are part and part of our daily lives in some of the teams. And I found this workshop, especially for 3 days, very, very useful. And I have seen the dedication and commitment from Jyotsna madam to such a level where a beginner and also an expert can also take on the lead at the same time. And it is so grateful to see that she has shared the handwritten notes also for people to experiment on right there on their machines, laptops or desktops. In fact, the deep learning applications have been penetrated into not only in the healthcare, aerospace, automotive, manufacturing, banking, finance, and many other applications too. Within my area, for the past few years, I'm looking at diagnosis and prognosis of diseases using the deep learning of applications and other things. We have not touched till the deep learning parts, but we're only at the moment we're only at the machine learning aspects and their activities. But with this workshop, I might be venturing with my teams for the deep learning activities and algorithms to be implemented in those things as well. So, hearty congratulations to Jyotsna madam for a wonderful session, and thanks to the Techatron Academy, wherein Viranjanailu has supported the entire team and fraternity here. And very good initiative from the Vignan University and the management. Looking forward to such things in as the time comes.
Thank you, Ram Kumar sir.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity here.
Hello, ma'am.
Any other participant, if they really want to share any feedback?
Good evening, madam. This is Vinay speaking.
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
Yeah, madam. I have attended few workshops this summer, madam. But this workshop was quite different, madam. So when we attend the workshop, theoretically and practically both were not matching. And practically shortage is there, theoretically shortage is there in some workshops I have seen. But when you are teaching, both theoretically and practically, it was wonderful. And everybody was happy as far as feedback links were concerned. And your practical session was very wonderful, madam. And we were able to learn many things which we have not learned in earlier workshops. This was really wonderful, madam. Your teaching was excellent.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Hello. So thank you all for making this workshop a grand success, and thank you for the good words, your feedback. So your feedback always boosts me. So you are kind of encouraging me to take more and more workshops. So hopefully we'll meet you in the future workshops. So thank you one and all. So shall we close it now? So if you don't have any